and welcome to another weekly update. I hope you had a really nice Christmas, time with the family, time to celebrate, whatever it was. Obviously a little bit different this year, but I still hope you were able to kind of recharge a little bit, and looking forward to New Year as well. Obviously, well, not obviously, but just how it is. In the last week, there hasn't really been an awful lot of news, and I also haven't been paying that much attention to what's been happening. But I kind of wanted to record something anyway, just to talk through what I thought were the highlights of the year. This is the last weekly update of 2020. So what I wanted to do is just go through and talk through the things that I thought were kind of really interesting this year, the kind of top things that I took out of all the weekly updates I did this year, and sort of other things that I thought were worthy of kind of mentioning it again. So I've only got like 6 or 7 items that I want to go through, but for me they kind of represent the important things that happened in 2020 for the Microsoft Teams development platform. So the first one to kind of talk through is around change notifications. So change notifications arrived in 2020. They were talked about at Ignite 2019, but really they've rolled out throughout 2020. And they really kind of change how we can access Graph for data. Change notifications are like webhooks. It's a different model of getting access to the data. It replaces kind of polling for changes and trying to work out what changes have happened since the last time you last got data. It changes that model from a kind of pull subscription model to more of a push subscription model. Yeah, interesting. And there's a number of different webhooks. This is quite an old blog post, this particular one, January the 2nd. So one of the first kind of blog posts that I did this year, but really an important one for me. And it's been really interesting throughout the year, I think, to see how these kind of webhooks, the change notifications, have rolled across the Microsoft Graph kind of landscape, how different workloads are picking up change notifications. And I think we'll see that increasing going into 2021. A couple of reasons. I think it's a nicer development model for developers. It means it's an easier model to deal with. It supports serverless much better, so it scales better, it's cheaper to run. The architecture is a bit cleaner, and actually I think it supports Microsoft as well. I think Microsoft prefer it because it removes some of the load from multiple developers all polling Graph to see whether something has changed on an item of data. It's much cleaner for Microsoft to manage that process by pushing notifications to third-party applications. So yeah, I think we'll see more of webhooks, more change notifications. I think the terms are interchangeable. Like Microsoft calls them change notifications. I think I call them webhooks because that's kind of, I don't know. I've always known them as webhooks, but whatever. Yeah, change notifications, a subscription model for Microsoft Graph, definitely worth keeping an eye on into 2021, I think. Obviously, it's been a most unusual year this year, and I think that's fair to say. And lots of things have been different, and lots of the way we've had to do things have been very different. Yeah, it's definitely been a challenging year, and nowhere more so than conferences, which are a big part of how we get information, how we find out what's going on in the world in our particular sort of domain, and how we network with people and how we get stuff done and how we find out information. And it's been really unusual this year not to be attending in-person conferences. There've been lots of virtual conferences. They've been great. They are, I'm going to say they are no better, no worse. They are different to in-person conferences. There are some things that are better, there are some things that are worse. But I know lots of people are missing in-person conferences, and I really hope we can get back to them in 2021. About May time this year, I recorded just a fun video around how you can make your own virtual Microsoft conference. So if you haven't seen that, it's not really like I wouldn't necessarily call it a technology pick, but you can definitely go and watch that. It's just kind of a fun video of me pretending I'm at a conference with kind of B-roll footage and kind of making stuff up. You can see here like the entrance going in, me with my ID card, Yeah, so if that sounds fun, a bit of swag, you see. Yeah, so if that sounds fun, you can definitely go and check that out. Yeah, just a bit of fun to remind you what it was like going to conferences again. Okay, other interesting things. So this moving forward to about June, and some changes to the bot framework. And the bot framework is quite an important integral part of building applications for Microsoft Teams. It's obviously not the only way. And also the bot framework is not just a Microsoft Teams thing. It has plenty of other channels as well. And two new channels lit up for the bot framework in June. And that is Amazon, the Amazon Alexa, and also Google Home. So I don't know if you can hear that. I did this in the video as well. I triggered my Amazon device. Alexa, stop. Marvelous. I won't bother editing that out because it's Christmas and no one cares, right? Anyway, let's look at this blog post, which is kind of interesting because it's how you can use the bot framework to ask Amazon for your Microsoft Teams presence, which was an interesting kind of thing I wrote. I thought it was. I think it's worth drawing attention to. I think the kind of whole concept of writing the bot once and then enabling it for different channels is really, really powerful. I love the fact that I wrote this as an application for Microsoft Teams, and then as soon as those two new skills came out for voice activated devices, I could just flick a couple of switches, didn't have to write any more code, and it just worked. So big fan of that, big fan of not having to write any more code. And it gives all the bots, that you've written, it gives them extra life, if you like, because now they can be available on all these different channels as well. So that was cool. Next thing, app templates. I've talked about app templates a lot this year. I think they're still undervalued. I think they're hugely valuable. In fact, so much so I built out a catalogue of app templates. So you can go and see this on my website. The links will put in the description of this video as well. A little video talking about app templates, but then also I categorize the app templates into different categories, I guess, and then just to make it easier to find them, basically. So productivity, communication, and then how to deploy them. So links to kind of how you actually go about deploying some videos to help you as well. And then listed out all the apps here with a bit of description, so you can kind of quickly look through and see if there's an app that matches what you're looking for. So hugely kind of undervalued, I think, hugely valuable. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't before. That's app templates. Okay, next. So this happened around August time. So I've talked about conferences and how we're missing in-person conferences. One of those conferences that went from in-person to virtual was Commsverse. It's run by someone called Mark Vale. And I sat down with Mark for an hour-long interview talking about what that was like, what it was like to organise a conference for the first time, to have to move the dates around and then eventually move it online, what his plans were for bringing back conferences in person in 2021, the pros and the cons, things to look out for, his experiences. And I've compiled that all together. The entire kind of 60-minute video is still there for you to watch, but I also kind of compiled it into a blog post as well. So that's kind of my pick for just kind of summarising that whole process of the way conferences have gone virtual this year. I found it really interesting to talk with Mark about what worked and what didn't, and kind of Mark's a very open person when it comes to kind of giving advice and giving his thoughts. So it was a kind of really good interview from my perspective. I got a lot out of it. I learned a lot, certainly talking to Mark about all this stuff, because I've never kind of organised a conference before, and I certainly hadn't thought through some of the kind of challenges and the pitfalls that Mark was talking about there. Okay, July was Microsoft Inspire. This year, again, obviously a virtual event, but just prior to that, I had the opportunity to talk with Mary-Jo Foley about Inspire, about her thoughts about the Microsoft partner ecosystem, kind of where Microsoft was going, how Microsoft had responded to the coronavirus sort of situation, and we talked through a whole bunch of things. The video you can go and watch, but yeah, it was really interesting for me because obviously nobody has covered Microsoft longer, I don't think. Yeah, really good to get her insight on all of these things, and especially around a partner networking conference, which Inspire is very much about networking. So how that works in a virtual world is interesting, and then also talking through things to look out for and where she sees changes being made and where she sees kind of the technology going, and where the rest of 2020 and 2021 might what might bring, and it's always good to go back and look at those videos as well, because what you'll find is a lot of the kind of predictions that she makes kind of are right on cue and right on track and come to pass. So it's very interesting to go back and watch those as well after the fact. And then finally, I want to call out the last thing in my kind of pick of the year, if you like, and that's a blog post I did around using Azure Communication Services, which is nothing to do with Microsoft Teams development platform necessarily, except that Microsoft Teams and Azure Communication Services share a common backend when it comes to media. So as a developer, I'm able to take the Azure Communication Services platform and build like a family video room to support kind of family video calls. I'm using a sample that the ACS team have built for doing group calling, and I've also kind of mashed it up with what I know about Azure Static Web Apps and the fact that they now support Azure Functions, and built something that you can take from a GitHub template. And because Azure Static Web Apps can work with GitHub Actions, actually you can take this template and without needing to write any code, deploy it directly to Azure and have it running as a website that you can use to kind of go and make calls straight away. So there's a whole how-to blog post about doing that. There's a whole video as well that goes through all the detail. And like I say, it builds on this this group calling sample project. And there's a bit about pricing. It's it's very kind of cheap. So because you're really only paying kind of for the per minute costs of using ACS. So, and then I've got all the instructions as well, and there's some screenshots down here as well, so you can see how it looks. You can have that up and running kind of within 10 minutes, something like that. And then you've got your own dedicated space to go and do group family calls, which I thought was interesting, and really speaks actually to how powerful the Azure Communication Services platform is. I think we'll see much more of ACS in 2021. I think it's definitely an area I'm really excited to see evolve, and I will definitely be keeping a close eye on where that's going, because they've only just got started, those folks, and they're already like the stuff you can do today. This how-to, is just kind of built on their sample, and they're still in preview and they're still adding features all the time. So yeah, super interesting there. All right, that's kind of my pick of the whole of 2020. It's been an interesting year for sure. It's been a challenging year, I think, as well. I think I would also call out the Talking Stuff series that I've been doing with Lindsay, because this year has really been one. It's been challenging kind of professionally, but it's been challenging emotionally as well. And I don't think we talk about that stuff enough. It's been hard, and I think it's been hard for everyone. And I think it's okay to say that it's been hard. If it hasn't been hard for you, that's great. Fantastic. But I think for lots of people, it has been kind of hard, and I think it's all right sometimes to say that that's happened. And that's what we do a lot in Talking Stuff. We kind of talk through some of the softer stuff. That's a whole series of videos. You can find it on my YouTube channel, and then I also kind of blog every now and again when it happens. So yeah, I'd mention those as well, alongside the things I've called out, the kind of technical notes that I've called out for 2020. I'll kind of also point you to the Talking Stuff series as well, if that is of interest. Right, that's the last weekly update for 2020. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening if you do the podcast. It does mean a lot, and you know, occasionally you tell me that you're listening or watching, and that's great to hear. It's actually really valuable for me to do this stuff as well, because it kind of forces me to keep my hand in, if you like, of make sure I'm constantly knowing what's happening, and I don't kind of fall behind. So it's good for me to do as well. And if it's useful to anyone, that's great, because then we all benefit. I'm definitely going to keep going with them in 2021. I would love to know your feedback. I'd love to know what you think about them. Are there things I should or could do better? There's a whole kind of, I could go down a whole rabbit hole of improving some of the technical quality of the presentation, you know, the video quality, if you like, or the audio quality. And that's more of a fun hobby for me to kind of tinker with and just try and improve stuff over time. But I think it's more the content that is really important. And so, as long as I can maintain the quality of the content, the rest of it I'll tinker with, and sometimes it goes up and sometimes it goes down. New Year's resolutions for me, more video content, I think, more content in general, kind of more samples, more code, more news. It is challenging to try and keep on top of all that stuff, but it is useful, and I benefit from knowing all that stuff as well, so it kind of keeps me on my toes, and it's good exercise for me to keep on top of all that stuff. I would love to know what you think I could do better, you know, where maybe I could do things that you're looking for, or, you know, that I'm not already doing, or suggestions for improvement or anything like that. Would always be really welcome. Thanks very much for watching this and all the other weekly updates. Have a fantastic end of the year and a very peaceful new year to you, and I'm excited for 2021. Let's go forth and let's beat this virus, and yeah, see where 2021 takes us. Happy New Year, everyone. Thanks.